Support for this podcast comes from iTube.net. iTube is ophthalmology's leading source for high-quality ophthalmic surgical videos, educational series, spotlights, and more. Visit iTube.net or follow us on Instagram at iTubeNet.
As much as we've learned about ocular surface disease, there is still so much yet to be discovered. The good news is, this creates a world of opportunity for eye care providers.
The goal of this podcast is to better understand this chronic and complex condition and keep you up to date on the advances being made in its diagnosis and treatment. So let's get to the point. Welcome to another episode of the To The Point podcast. My name's Jackie Garlich, and I'm joined by my lovely co-host, Jessilin Quint. Hi, Jessilin. Hello.
Hello, Jackie, and hello to all of our listeners. What an exciting week this has been. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like dry eye and allergies have just been at the forefront of my clinics, and I've just had a surge in office visits of vision, it's impacting vision, impacting comfort. And so what better way to talk about dry eye than with today's awesome guest?
I know. You know what, Jessilin, I guess it's kind of hard for us, but do you ever listen to the SmartList podcast? You know, SmartList?
No, I need to.
Okay.
Tell me more.
Basically, there's this podcast. It's like Jason Bateman, Will Arnett. Anyway, they have a surprise guest. Like the two other people that they're the co-hosts don't know who the guest is, and then they try to guess. And I was like, dude, we should do that too. But you already know who this guest is, but our audience doesn't know. So I am going to intro, and we'll see if people can mentally in their head try to guess who this guest might be.
I love this game.
So we have an incredible guest with us today, a giant advocate in the dry eye space. I don't actually know why she hasn't been on our podcast already, but she is the clinical director of the Dry Eye Relief Center. Phenomenal name, by the way, the Dry Eye Relief Center at Lusk Eye Specialists. First, she's an author. Not only does she write in several optometry journals, but in 2018, she published the book Alleviate Dry Eye as an educational guide for patients to get relief from their dry eyes. She is a leader in our industry. In 2021, she was appointed to the Public Awareness Committee for the Tear Film and Ocular Surface Society. She's also a celebrity. She's been featured in InStyle magazine and Forbes. And most recently, she gave a TEDx talk titled Daily Habits for Clear Vision in the Digital Age. You guys, welcome Pam Theriot, everybody. Yay, Pam!
Thank you so much for that introduction. I feel like a rock star. Thank you.
You are, Pam. How do we be you? How do we be like you? How can we be you? This is incredible. You've done so much stuff. And the most recent about this TEDx talk, incredible. You've done a lot of work in the dry eye space, and we're so happy you took the time to talk with us tonight.
Well, I'm so honored to be here. I'm a longtime listener, and like I said, I've listened to every episode. You guys always have the best guests, and sometimes I have to listen over and over to the podcast because there's so much good stuff.
Oh, you're so sweet. That means so much. Well, we are absolutely thrilled. So maybe for those of our listeners that don't know your dry eye journey, like you are obviously a rock star and you've done so much, but thinking back to like where you started and how you kind of got into dry eye and started to kind of build the clinic that you're in, give us like a little synopsis of what that journey looked like.
Well, I would say my dry eye journey is quite long. My husband was in the military for 20 years. And so I spent a long time of my career in the desert between New Mexico and Arizona. There was about 12 years bouncing back and forth. We also lived in upstate New York. So he had a 20-year career and we moved around a lot. So I spent a long time in the desert. And that's when my own dry eye really kicked in. We were living in Albuquerque. My husband was in a remote tour. So that means he had to go by himself on tour, and I couldn't go with him. So he was in Korea and I was in Albuquerque, and I was trying to keep myself busy. So I decided to run a marathon. So I started training for a marathon, and I was outdoors in New Mexico, a mile high all the time, because it takes a long time to train for a marathon. So I couldn't wear my contact lenses. My eye makeup was running down my face. And this is like circa 2006, 2007. So not a lot of options back then. Restasis came on the market. I think we had Restasis and we had punctal plugs. And I was so embarrassed. This is my first couple of years in practice. I'm trying to make a name for myself. I'm trying to be a good optometrist, be a good doctor. And I can't even wear my own contact lenses. I'm just crying down my face. So that's when my dry eye journey started. It was like, I needed to do something to help myself and then help my patients. I went to every lecture, read every paper, did all the things, dry eye boot camp, dry eye university. And it's the last week. The final one is this month. So,
oh, wow.
Have you been, Jackie, to dry eye university?
No, I haven't, but I have seen this and I was like, when you said dry eye boot camp, I was like, oh my gosh, I remember that. And I wanted to go to that too. It's since no longer, but yeah, that isn't, you make a good point. Like until you yourself suffer with one of the problems that you are talking to your patients about all the time, you don't really empathize as much as when you actually are experiencing those own symptoms. I also have dry eye. So I get it. I don't want to have to think about my eyes all day long. And sometimes there are days where I do, and it's really annoying. And so, I think you unfortunately, you going through this has made you a better doctor because you're able to really empathize with your patients more. I want to hear about, you have led the military life with, I'm a little familiar. I wasn't active duty, but I'm in the military as well. But there's a lot of moving around that happens, especially your husband was a, pilot. So certainly there's a lot going on in terms of training there. But this moving around is, maybe not really conducive to owning your own practice. And we talk to a lot of people who start their own dry eye practice or build their own dry eye practice within their own clinic. And not everybody wants to own their own practice. And I get that. I was that person too before I bought this practice that I have. So I want to hear how you built such a big dry eye referral center within a practice that you are not an owner of, that you're an associate of. Can you talk a little bit about that for people who might want to do that in their, modality that they're in?
Well, absolutely. I think it starts with a passion, right? So when we moved to where we live now, which is in Shreveport, Louisiana, my husband was on a 4-year assignment. And so I knew that we would be here for 4 years, and owning a practice for 4 years is, as you both know, too much work for 4 years of benefit, right? So I got a position with an ophthalmology clinic that had 2 cornea specialists, a glaucoma specialist. All 3 of them do cataract surgery, and they all do refractive surgery as well. And I had already a passion in me for dry eye. So I entered the interview with the goal of building their dry eye practice, and just went into the interview with that idea. Here I am. I would like to help your patients to feel more comfortable, have better surgical outcomes. And they were on board with it. And slowly we grew. Now I've been there about 8 years because #COVID stopped us from leaving Shreveport in 2020. We were supposed to move, and long story short, we didn't. And so we're still here. And so now I've been at the practice about 8 years and really do have that thriving referral practice within our office. And I think just optometrists in general are just a really friendly bunch. Having moved to 6 different states and moved, I lived in a couple of states twice. So about 8 moves, 6 different states. I always felt comfortable going to that first optometric society meeting. Every town has them, like at least all the 8 places that I've lived, has these meetings once a month. The optometrists get together, they get some education, and we're just very friendly and collegial. So when I would go, I'd just say, hey, I'm here. I moved here from Arizona, and, I'd start telling people that I really love dry eye. And so regardless of where I was working, I would just tell them what I loved, and my colleagues would refer. And through the years now, I've built up some thought leadership, being a KOL for certain couple of different companies, and so they've heard me lecture, and now they feel very confident referring to me and into my clinic where their patients can also have surgery.
Okay, so I have a follow-up on this interview. You're in an interview, okay, for this job, and you're like, "Hey, I want to build this dry eye practice." And was that well received? Were they like, "Yeah, totally. We need someone to build a dry eye practice and just treat our dry eye patients because we don't want to?" But they were into it immediately?
They were, like I said, that I worked with two cornea specialists, and so they were like, okay, we see the dry eye. They could admit that they had dry eye in their office, and that it wasn't always the most fun thing to do, and getting that off their plate gave them room for more surgical consults. So it was quite a win-win situation. They were doing some at home products that they were selling already in the clinic, so they kind of had their foot in the door. They were open to it, and then it's really grown through the years.
I love that. So I have my business hat on right now, and I'm thinking about kind of the business side and the financial side. And so when you're going through this, even if they're on board, can you walk us through a little bit how you kind of set up, like, I'm going to need these pieces of equipment, right? And like, did you have to, like, how did you justify that, right? Did you have to do like a big presentation? What's kind of the process that goes through that when something new comes out, or if you're bringing on, additional staff to kind of help support this, the dry clinic as a whole. What has that looked like? Because I think a lot of people that are interested in this, but it's kind of like, even if you get your crew on board, sometimes it's like, well, how do we run through the logistics of actually making that happen? And I can propose this, but how do I propose that to my boss, right? Of why we need this kind of piece of equipment, or where we start, or how many patients we need to kind of justify that. So how did you start to build kind of that aspect of it with the clinic that you're at?
So definitely bootstrapping. Starting with where you are, right? You have fluorescein strips, you have lissamine green strips. We do Schirmer's testing on all of our refractive surgery patients, all of our cataract patients. So we had some basics, right? And that's how I started. I was just going to stain them and see what their tear production was. And that went on the first couple of years, and then mybography started getting more and more popular. I got a used mybographer, and now I have even a handheld mybographer that I can put on my phone and take a quick mybography. There's some really inexpensive options these days that mybography is not going to break the bank. That was definitely the diagnostic that I wanted. Sooner than I got it, but eventually I did. And then treatment options came in, and I got a lot of no's. I wanted IPL before it was FDA approved, and that was not going to happen in the clinic that I was at. The ophthalmologists were just like, nope, that is not tried and true. We're not doing it. But eventually we did. So, it's just like, if you have a goal, you have to keep after it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, if you can show, I mean, I also think like if you can show the ROI for this, and I think how you approach that with, I can take these off your plate. I think from my experience, a lot of ophthalmologists don't want to manage a lot of dry eye. So if you have a plan on how you can take that off their plate and how you could make that profitable for them, this is, as you said, a win-win for everyone. So I think that's, I mean, a great approach. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. Do you have any other tips on, kind of having that conversation, which might be, hey, I want $100,000 piece of equipment, an IPL. Did you, even think to like talk about spreadsheets or how that might actually look in reality? If you do X number of patients to get them to sign up, this many patients will make this amount of money. Like, did it even go deep down like that, or was it more super?
Definitely it did. They wanted to see the numbers. They wanted to see how long it would take to pay off the equipment. and really to go through the nuts and bolts of, how many patients would it take and what time would that take and what would that look like on my schedule and what would my technician be doing, what could the staff do to shorten my, my time and pre-prep and after the IPL procedure. I have a technician that can express the glands. If my time is getting really tight, she'll go in and express glands. So, we've made some headway in the office utilizing ancillary staff. But I do all of the consults myself. We don't hand off after I say, oh, I want you to do an IPL, they don't go over and see like the surgery coordinator and get told what it is. I explain it to the patients. I have them understand the treatment and why I think they should do it. And so it's really a lot of ownership on my part that this is what I think is the best for my patients and the treatment plan I come up with.
Has it impacted your, I think about you're building this clinic for these owners, right? Essentially, right? Like you're even creating the flow of the system. You're probably creating the educational documents that you're giving. You're creating all of it, right? So that ideally somebody else could kind of walk in and step in and continue this. When you went to negotiate, did you, and maybe hindsight's 2020, right? Of how we would do things, but would you negotiate like an extra compensation, right? For kind of building this in addition to the doctor services that you've provided? Or has that been just a realm of negotiation like each year as you've been up for kind of an annual review? Or just any advice or shedding any light on somebody? Because I'm just a big proponent of, being compensated fairly for the work that you do and not giving away, your skill set and talents for free. But sometimes that's easier said than done when you want to make your dream happen. So any like advice for somebody who's maybe in that shoes, but also trying to be mindful about, how you can be compensated for that.
Right. So in my case, it was a matter of I thought I would be here for 4 years, and it was my professional goal to do this for myself. So everything that I created, I just consider my intellectual property. So when I was going to move on in 4 years, it was still my thoughts and stuff. I was going to take my handouts with me, and what I had done was still going to be, my education to myself. And so I didn't think of it that way of, I wanted to have some piece of the business because I had a timeline in my head. And since then, things have grown, and now I know that my husband has retired, so we are here until we decide not to be here. And I work for just fabulous doctors who have compensated me for the work that I've done. And I think you could definitely negotiate that. You could say, if I'm bringing in, this amount over what you would expect me to bring in this month or this week or this day, then I want a percentage of that. And I think that's absolutely negotiable for many doctors, and I would advocate for that because you are doing a procedure that goes above and beyond a baseline skill set, and your diagnostic, just realizing what it is you are treating, knowing that you need to go to that next level and treat patients with a dry eye in-office procedure versus just writing another script. I think that you should be compensated for that.
So just to like switch gears a little bit here, I want to talk a little bit more about your TEDx talk. So how does one even get selected to do a TEDx talk? Tell us all about this.
Right. So it was my goal to do a TEDx talk. So like the book that I wrote, I took a course on how to self-publish a book. And so then I self-published Alleviate Dry Eye in 2018. So then in 2024, I was like, I'm turning 50 this year. My 50-year goal, I am going to be on a TEDx stage in my 50th year of life, right? We all have to have these goals in life. So I signed up for a course on how to become a TEDx speaker. And the course said that you needed to apply to 80 to 100 stages. You're just going to have to put your name out there to 80 to 100 different stages to land one.
Wow.
Boom.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wait, and what does this mean? Like you're applying, you're sending a lecture in, what is
Yeah,
it?
so there's an application. You apply to be a speaker to the different stages. There are stages all across the world. Every single week, there are stages to apply to. So I just put my butt in the chair and applied and applied and applied and applied.
Oh my gosh. Like, and you say, when you say stages, you mean like TEDx Boston, TEDx Chicago, like any city, you mean?
Absolutely. And the course that I was taking gave us a list.
Oh,
And so
wow.
I applied to every English speaking stage I could find.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
I think that just really is a testament to your passion for eye care, right? And even just betting yourself and being like a go-getter and achieving those goals, like that's pretty impressive because that was probably just like a lot of applications, a lot of work.
It was
Yeah,
a lot of applications. And so
But you're
this
representing optometry and eye care on like this huge TEDx stage, which is amazing.
Yeah, it was an amazing event. I'm so glad that I was able to do that, really bring optometry to a global audience, because it's not where I presented the talk that matters. It's the fact that the talk is going to be on the YouTube channel, the TEDx YouTube channel. And anyone in the entire world can then watch that video. And the call to action at the end is schedule an eye exam. Your vision is important. You can take care of it. The talk is about digital eye strain and things that you could do to be more comfortable while you're using your computer. But the call to action is to, go see your eye doctor. Your eyes are important. And that's really what I wanted to get out there, is that you could ask a 2-year-old, any 2-year-old, we were just talking about 2-year-olds, what do you do to take care of your teeth? I bet that 2-year-old could tell you, right? But ask anyone, I don't care if they're 2 or 42 or 92, they don't know what to do to take care of their eyes, right? And as ocular surface specialists, we know. We know what to do to take care of your eyes, right? And getting that message out to the world that there are steps that you can take to protect your eyes, to protect your precious meibomian glands from atrophying from staring at these digital devices. That was my goal, to get on that global stage and talk to people about eye care.
You're such, I mean, I there, we all sort of like lecture kind of, we've all been on the podium to lecture to each other, our colleagues, but you are probably the person who is the most engaged with trying to educate the world about what we do. I mean, you have a blog dedicated to, dry eye and tips. You wrote this book. All of this stuff that you're doing is really aimed at educating the public, and you do like such an incredible job at that. I'm happy to call you a friend and a colleague. You're doing such great work and really lifting and really elevating optometry. So thank you for all of your work in that department.
Thank you. That means so much to me, Jackie.
So because Pam is such a rock star, I am just like on pins and needles wanting to know what her life lens is. Because now I think going forward, I'm just going to have the thoughts like, what would Pam do? How I navigate my whole life. What would Pam do? And that's really going to be my guiding force. So, if you've been a listener, you know that we ask all of our guests kind of what a life lens is. And it's just something that has helped just enhance their life in some way. So tell us, Pam, what is your life lens?
I have a life coach.
Ooh,
you do?
Tell us more.
I do. I love her so much. My life coach, her name is Sarah Moody. She has a podcast called Rock Your Brain, Rock Your Life. And, I talk to her every week. We set goals. We set ways that I'm going to reach them. And she really helps me with my mindset of what is it that I need to focus on in order to reach those goals. And I think without her, you're swimming in the sea of self-doubt all day long. Just even our patients. I mean, how many times have you looked at your ocular surface disease patient and you're like, oh my goodness, why is this not getting better? And you've done the corneal sensation and you're like, it isn't neurotrophic keratitis, but why is it getting better? Right? So, this whole sea of self-doubt just can spin around our heads all day long. And really, getting out of that mindset and talking to my coach and getting goals and guidelines, tips, tools that I can use to really push myself to where I want to be.
That is incredible. I don't know anyone with a life coach, but it sounds amazing. Maybe we should have life coaches, Jessilin. What are we doing?
That's what I'm thinking. I think that we need to get on this train. That is awesome.
Absolutely. It's the best thing ever.
I love it. Well, Pam, thank you so much for being here and just sharing your knowledge and your expertise and for all you're doing for eye care on, the world stage. Thank you, thank you, thank you. If any of our listeners wanted to connect with you, how could they find you?
Awesome. Well, come to my website, pamtheriot.com. That's spelled pamtheriot.com. And the first thing you're going to see is a banner of me on the TEDx stage. The video is currently not out yet, but depending on when you listen to this podcast, it might be. And there will be a button that you can push and watch my TEDx video. I would love for you all to watch the video. And from there, if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok, or Instagram, it's Pam Theriot on all of those sites.
What a pleasure, Pam. Thank you so much for spending your evening with us. Love talking to you.
Thanks for having me.